Hey guys, it's Rachel and it is Thankful Thursday, and this week we're looking at basically what the differences are between getting triggered and being influenced by someone else's eating disorders behaviour, and how you can separate yourself from taking on those rituals and behaviours but still be a support system for that person or be a friend of that person. I thought about this quite a bit before making the video, and I was trying to think of kind of circumstances that we can maybe find ourselves in whereby we are friends with and supporting another person through recovery. We can all often be at very different stages of recovery, and I think sometimes when there's somebody who's stronger, the relationship can sometimes feel unbalanced because the stronger person, the one who's more recovered, is more supportive of the other one. I think there's also a huge amount of benefit in not only the person who is in the earlier stages of recovering trusting somebody else and looking up to somebody else, but for the person who is in a more recovered place, and in advising the person who's maybe not as far through their recovery, that they can reinforce some of what's been said. When I first developed my eating disorder, I didn't actually know anybody else who had an eating disorder, and I actually went online and met quite a few people who I've now managed to meet, kind of face to face. But it was a difficult time because, when you're both struggling, or there's a group of you who are struggling, it can sometimes be quite exhausting. But I think that that's possibly when you get a huge amount of support as well, as long as it's the right kind of support and that the support isn't affecting you in a negative way. I'm quite fortunate in that even within my eating disorder, I've never been particularly easily triggered. There is one, maybe a couple of people who affected me rather negatively, but that wasn't particularly their fault. It was just that element of kind of competition and secrecy that goes on within, for me, which went on within my anorexia. And using other people who struggled with an eating disorder to justify the fact that I wasn't necessarily ill because this other person had it, and I tried to normalise the behaviour. I think it can become very easy to take on behaviours of another person, especially if you're spending a great deal of time with them. And I think certainly when you're vulnerable and you're very poorly, that because of the obsession you have with food and because of the obsession you have with your body, that you do pick up on other people with those struggles. And it's kind of like when I was really anorexic and I'd be walking around, you'd notice everybody else who had anorexia, and those things only kind of fade as your obsession with your eating disorder decreases, and that obsession only decreases as you start to get better. And I think certainly in treatment, and whether that's inpatient, outpatient, daycare, or even just going through a group with other people with eating disorders, for a lot of people can be a very, very triggering experience. I know that there's been people I've known who in groups have really struggled when there's somebody else there who's eating disordered, and they feel they're kind of being looked up and down and assessed and all the rest of it. And whether that's true or not, I think we're also very hypersensitive to that type of thing. But if you do have a very close friend, or you have a relationship whereby another person has an eating disorder, I think that the only way you can remain a support system to that person is by keeping quite clear boundaries. I'm not here, and nor are any of us here to tell you exactly what those boundaries are, but for me that's been something of a huge lesson, that I've had to learn that I can only do so much for another person, and that I actually can't save anybody. And I'm not saying that I used to kind of go on a mission to save everybody, but there was a huge part of me that wanted to help a lot of people, and that's still there. But it's like, there's only so much I can do. In a piece of writing I did, I remembered an analogy I was given in a book, and it basically says something about the lighthouse, and how it's like the lighthouse is there to guide the ships from the sea into the shore, you know, and to dock, and that it provides that light, a beacon, it provides a path, and there's a kind of A point and B point, and that's all that the lighthouse can do. And if that boat doesn't follow that, then the only, you know, the lighthouse can't exactly like pick itself up, put feet on it, walk into the sea and drag the boat to shore. And I kind of like that analogy with regards to supporting another person and remaining mindful of those boundaries and mindful of the fact that there is only so much you can do. What I hope we do here on the channel is provide some sort of path, or provide a light, or some sort of guidance. And whilst you could watch all these videos and gain insight for your illness and recovery, there is only so much that our videos can give you, because recovery is a very active process. And when you're around other people with eating disorders, it's very easy to make that process active in a negative way and to become very competitive. And what I really had to do when I was recovering was to change that mindset, and to notice that at the end of the day, if I'm going to use these ill people to trigger me and make me worse, why can I not use them to help me get better? And there's a very classic case of when I was in hospital, kind of 8 years ago now. I realised that I could either look to people who were poorly and feel jealous, a wish to kind of be as thin as or thinner than them, or what have you, or I could look and think, well, this is, if I don't change my behaviours now, then they're never going to change, and I'm always going to be this poorly. And as hard as that was to accept, because when we're in the throes of an eating disorder, we kind of, well, not kind of, we very much deceive ourselves, and we're in a lot of denial about not only the severity of our eating disorders, but the way we sort of push it to the back of our heads and say, this will go, this will go, this will go, it's not a problem, it's not a problem, and then it's 5 years later, 10 years later, 20 years later. So the key for me when it comes to another person having an eating disorder as well, and you're both kind of trying to help one another, and then one maybe struggles for a while and you're not being affected by that, is communication. And I think that that's all you can do, is communicate. Now that can be through a letter, through writing, if you don't feel comfortable talking to the person over the phone or face to face. I think it's important to let them know and just kind of say, do you know, I'm finding it really hard that you're using behaviours, and I'm sorry that you're still struggling, because I've been around people with eating disorders when I've kind of been in recovery, and found it very difficult when they wouldn't eat either and stuff, and had to try and find a lot of courage within me that although they were eating, say, their breakfast cereal with a teaspoon, that I would eat mine with a normal spoon and I would get on with it. And that's certainly the case for people when they're in hospital and people have these kind of different behaviours and rituals, but also outside of hospital when you may be staying with a friend who's eating disorder. And all I can say to you is that as if you are friends and you do have a relationship, that, you know, for someone to be very true, they have to appreciate where you're at as well. And, you know, we had this, I met up with a group of girls like a few years ago, all of us from a support forum, and it's like there was kind of like this agreed kind of unsaid contract that all of us would go and do our best to eat what we could. And it didn't mean that we all ate the same, or it didn't mean that some of us who were struggling more could eat as well, but it was just kind of like a commitment to one another that we would at least try, and so that the weekend wasn't taken over by all this kind of like chaos and confusion and people not eating and people starving themselves. And when I say eating, we're all at different stages, so it's just about doing what you can in each moment and appreciating and respecting the people who you're with. So yeah, the key for me is communication. And, you know, I can sometimes spend time with my girlfriend, and even this far through, and it's not that I want to take on their behaviours, but I kind of can get quite frustrated, and I will call her on behaviours, and I think that that's another advantage of having friends who are going through recovery, is that they are eating in a certain way or doing whatever, you can kind of say, you know, have you recognised that you're still cutting your food up into 1,000 million pieces? Have you recognised that you still take a really long time to do this? Or just different behaviours that people use, using a lot of salt, using, I don't know, there's just so many different rituals and behaviours that people have, and I think the most difficult part of it is when they aren't being called on it. And you have to do that, and calling your friends on their issues can cause conflict. But what I will say is that, you know, I've got some very good friends, and I have to be able to call them when I'm worried about them and say, do you know what, I've noticed that you're doing this or you're doing that, and that's fine, because it's part of this journey, it's part of recovery, but I'm finding that really hard. And what you might find is that you need time out from one another, and I don't think that has to necessarily be associated to rejection or abandonment. When things got really difficult with my girlfriend, we had to have space from one another because it was just too complex. And what has happened now is that through communication, you know, we are realising that we can come through all of this. So you have to kind of stand your own ground a little bit, really recognise your own needs, appreciate when things are getting a bit too much, and I think the key to saving a relationship is that, you know, try and engage your friend in their own form of treatment and therapy, so that you're not playing each other's therapist, but that when you do talk, you can just be friends. But also, you know, if you do want to talk about stuff, and I do with my best friend, both, well, I'm no longer in therapy, but she is, and we have both been for a long time, and it allowed us just to be friends because somebody else was kind of working with us to get better. And just, yeah, communicate, set boundaries, recognise your own limits, and don't feel bad about kind of saying, I'm finding this really difficult, because if it's somebody who's a real friend to you, they will understand, and if they can't understand at that moment, that's not because of you, and it's because of where their head is at that point. So they're kind of my advice, is to just kind of recognise your own boundaries, take space when you need to maybe notice their rituals and be able to say something to them, and then to be able to like call yourself on if you're using it. If you're spending a lot of time with the person as much as you love them, but it's making you worse because of the competitive element of an eating disorder, or the nature of kind of picking up on different things, you do need to communicate that. And I think that that's my biggest sort of piece of advice, is communication, effective communication. And yeah, I hope that's been helpful, and hope it's covered some of kind of what the viewer was sort of requesting from that. And I hope you're all well, and I will see you next week. Okay guys, God bless, bye.